In the small town of Eldridge, there stood a derelict house at the edge of town. For decades, locals whispered about the place, telling tales of strange lights and unsettling noises that came from within. The house had been abandoned ever since the mysterious disappearance of the last owner, Margaret Lowell, a reclusive woman who had lived there alone for years. One crisp autumn evening, a group of adventurous friends, Lena, Mark, Emma, and Jake, decided to explore the house, eager to uncover the truth behind the eerie legends. They arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement and overgrown garden. The house loomed ahead, its windows dark and unwelcoming, as if guarding the secrets within. With flashlights in hand, the friends pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly as it swung inward. They stepped into the grand foyer, where the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Old portraits of the Lowell family lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow the intruders with a haunting intensity. As they made their way through the dimly lit rooms, they discovered that the house was in a state of disrepair, torn wallpaper, broken furniture, and cobwebs stretching across the corners. In the library, they found a peculiar journal lying on a wooden desk. The journal was bound in weathered leather, its pages filled with frantic, handwritten notes and strange symbols. Lena, ever the skeptic, was the first to open it. As she read aloud, the others noticed the temperature in the room plummeting. The journal spoke of rituals and a curse, claiming that Margaret Lowell had delved into forbidden knowledge, summoning entities that preyed on the living. The final entry was particularly unsettling, warning that the house was no longer a place of human habitation but a vessel for something else, something that watched and waited. The friends laughed off the warnings, dismissing them as nothing more than superstitious nonsense. However, as they continued their exploration, they began to notice odd occurrences, strange whispers echoing through the halls, shadows darting out of the corner of their eyes, and a distinct feeling of being watched. The situation escalated when Jake, feeling uneasy, decided to venture into the basement alone. He descended the creaky stairs, his flashlight barely piercing the darkness. At the bottom, he discovered an old, ornate mirror covered in a heavy sheet. Driven by curiosity, he pulled the sheet away. The mirror's surface was murky and distorted, but as Jake stared into it, the reflection began to change. Instead of his own face, he saw the face of a woman, pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to reach out from the glass. In a panic, Jake turned to leave, but found himself unable to move, as if something unseen had gripped him. Meanwhile, Lena, Mark, and Emma noticed Jake's absence and went in search of him. As they approached the basement, the whispers grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of anguished voices. They called out for Jake, but there was no response. When they reached the basement door, it was locked tight, despite having been open moments before. Desperate, they forced the door open and rushed down the stairs, only to find the basement empty. The mirror was now covered once more, and Jake was nowhere to be seen. Their flashlights flickered as a cold breeze swept through the room. The friends exchanged terrified glances, realizing that something was terribly wrong. Panic set in as they tried to leave, but the house seemed to resist their efforts. Doors that had once been open were now barred, windows were shut tight, and the once familiar rooms now twisted into a maze of darkness. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as if the house itself were alive and hungry. In a final, desperate attempt, Lena grabbed the journal and read aloud the incantations inscribed within. The house shuddered, and the oppressive atmosphere seemed to lift, if only slightly. The friends stumbled through the shifting corridors, guided only by the dim light of their flashlights and their sheer will to escape. Finally, they burst through the front door, gasping for fresh air as they tumbled onto the overgrown lawn. They looked back at the house, which now stood silent and still, its dark windows like hollow eyes watching them. The night had grown eerily quiet, and the friends knew that they had narrowly escaped something far beyond their understanding. As they walked away, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed, that the shadows of the house were lurking just out of sight. The house remained abandoned, but its reputation grew darker in the town's lore, and the friends knew that they would never forget the terror they had experienced. Years later, when new residents moved into the house, they reported strange occurrences, whispers in the night, fleeting shadows, and the unnerving feeling of being watched. The house had claimed new victims, and its dark legend continued to grow, leaving Eldridge forever haunted by the secrets within those ancient, decaying walls.